In this video, what I'd like to do is take a look at Bitcoin and look at the previous two halving cycles before this current cycle that we're in, and show you a few of the things that I've done in researching the price action and what I think it means for this particular cycle and what the possibilities are in this cycle. Now, a lot of people are expecting this cycle to end in December, at the peak being in December, because it was in December the last two cycles. I would like to show you that I don't think that that's going to happen in this cycle. I've seen predictions for, you know, July, August, September, October, November, and December. Where I am leaning is in September. However, in the calculations that I've done and in the way that I've researched things, it looks like we could, at the earliest, see the peak at the end, perhaps, of July. I don't think that's likely. I think we're looking at somewhere in September as being the likely spot. And my window is no later than maybe end of October, early November. But again, the further away you get from September, the less likely I think it's going to be. And so my base case is that sometime around mid-September, it looks like that's going to be where the cycle top is going to be. And I'll walk through that in just a little bit. But I want you to take a look. My screen is littered with all of these vertical lines. First, a couple of things. I have these blue vertical lines that are indicating when the halvings started. And then I have these vertical gold lines in these two vertical gold lines, which are showing you where the tops of the cycle were during each halving. I'm log scaled right now because it makes it look a little bit easier. You can actually see the price movement, the price action in the previous cycles. So I'll probably stay in the log scale during this video just so you are aware. So I want to explain here what these vertical purple pinkish lines are. So I did a lot of work. I'm going to go, I'm not going to go into all the little nitty gritty details, and you can ignore these lines that are connecting the peaks. I'll bring those and also the lows. I'll bring that up perhaps a little bit later. Maybe I'll leave this one on so that I don't forget about it later on. But anyway, in any case, I'm going to go into a daily chart now, and I'm going to have to navigate back a bit. So bear with me just a second. What I discovered as I was looking into Bitcoin and its halving cycles, what I did was I found near-term peaks. And when I say near-term peak, what I'm saying is a time when price clearly spiked and then had a pullback of significant degree. And the long story short of that is that I came to this calculation of about 131 days. And so what I did was I took my line tool, my info line tool, and I created a line that was approximately 131 days. And I started at the halving, so here around 28 November 2012, the first halving. If you position it somewhat like that, then you get here the right side of that line on this vertical. Okay, so just know I did that 131 days, and I marked a vertical line without really paying any attention to anything else. I just marked a vertical line at every 131 days. And what I found was interesting is that often, not always, but often, within about 30 days or so of that vertical line, in many cases there was a near-term peak. And the degree of the peak is not always the same, but there is something like it. So I'm going to start with the first halving, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. Okay, so here's the first halving. The first halving cycle was marked by a double top. So we had a double wave. We had double peaks. The first one peaked really high within the first 131 days. I mean, look at where that vertical line is. It's almost exactly at that first high, right? And then in the first halving, we had, or after the first halving, we had a long pullback and consolidation before going up. Notice this one, I mean, there's this little peak right here, and then it took a ways for it to regain its new all-time high, or regain, I should say, not an all-time high, regain this near-term high, and then it eventually spiked up to this all-time high kind of in December of, or here I have it marked at the end of November of 2013. So while this section right here did not yield like a spike, a really big spike, it was kind of a near-term high for the region, in terms of more near-term time frame. Okay, and then if you look here, I've got this box. Okay, this box extends 30 days into the past and 30 days into the future from this vertical. And you'll notice the peak of the cycle came within 30 days of this vertical line. All right. Now, what I just kept doing this, even though I knew this was the spike, I just kept doing the 131 day lines. Okay. And even here, like, you get a little bit of a spike up right here as it was making its 80 to 90% drawdown. And then even here, as it was drawing down, you had a little spike here, even though it's not as high as this one. And then right here, you had another little spike. Thought that was interesting. And on the way down, the 131 days also marked close to the low in the first cycle. So we have obviously this capitulation right here. And then we also have, if you wanted to take, a trend line and just mark it right there. Whoops, that's a really bad line. As kind of like the place where people are accumulating once again. That is the spot to do it. Notice that those lows are marked by these verticals at 131 days. I just think that's kind of interesting, right? And then another near-term little spike here. And then we get to the next halving, right? And this one doesn't follow exactly the same way, because in this one, we didn't have a double top, a double spike for two tops. But look at here, just outside the 30-day box, it's technically a total of 60 days, but just a little bit past this 30 days, we got a spike. And then just before, or just right in the beginning of this 30-day, 60-day range is another spike. I missed this one, but then I have this spike up here. And then look at this. Right here on the fourth vertical, it's exactly on the top. And then as we come down into the 80 to 90% drawdown, I've got another spike here. I've got another spike here. And once again, if you want to draw a line, let me undo the auto for a second here so that I can drag the chart up a bit. During the during the accumulation, right here, notice that the 131-day mark shows you the general area. I mean, it's not exactly the low. That's right here, obviously. It doesn't give you the exact low, but it does, and also right here, but it does kind of give you a spot where you could reaccumulate a bunch of Bitcoin for before the next halving. Okay, so then I've got we're continuing on. And then we had the March sell-off. And now what worries me is that the March sell-off affects the model. This is where the model broke to the downside. And it's possible that the model could break again. I'm not counting on it, but you always have to be aware. All right. So here we go. We're going to go into this cycle now, because what the price action, actually, let me, before I do that, before I go into predictions, let me go back to my 3-day chart. And let me pull back and look at our first two cycles so that we can kind of get our bearings here. If we go right here. So notice once again, here's what I'd like to show you. 1, 2, 3. After 3 verticals, after 331-day cycles, we've already gotten to the top. Okay, so at the third one, it's the top, and then 4, 5, 6. Between 6, 7, and 8 is where we get the bottom. Okay, now if we go into the second cycle, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's at the 4 mark, the fourth vertical. Okay, and then 5, 6, 7. Right? So while in the first cycle, the third vertical is where you get the cycle top. The fourth or the second halving cycle, it's the fourth vertical, you get the top. But both of the kind of bottoms, where you would accumulate more Bitcoin, happens at the seventh vertical in each cycle. That's kind of the sweet spot in both cycles. Okay, so if that's the case, then what does that mean for this cycle? Well, it's hard telling because you never know what's going to happen with the model. It's a little bit, there's a lot of stuff going on in my chart, so I apologize, but I'm going to do my best to count this, right? 1, 2, 3. If we were going to follow the first cycle, which we did not have a double spike, so I'm not sure that we're going to do that. If we were going to follow the first cycle, then our next vertical right here, which should be in June, which I don't think is going to happen, would be where the peak would be. I don't think that's going to happen. If it was going to be in the fourth vertical, then that's potentially in October, right? Mid to late October. But I think because we are performing somewhere between the first halving and the second halving cycles, I think that's why we're going to get in our September probably. It seems like we're trending more towards like the second cycle in terms of our price action, or the second halving cycle. That's why I think I'm leaning towards a September high. Okay. And so I think that's where we're going to get the highest, somewhere between the third and the fourth peak. Okay. Now some might say, oh, because the first cycle had the peak was at the third vertical, and the second cycle the peak was at the fourth vertical, then that means that during this halving cycle it'll be at the fifth peak. Well, that wouldn't be until 2022. To me, that seems way too late, and I don't think that we're getting a lengthening cycle. I don't think that that's how it's working. Okay, so I think the high, the spike high, the cycle high, I should say, in my opinion, is going to happen somewhere in this area. So this target range is in the about $230,000 per Bitcoin. Now we could undershoot that a little bit, or we could overshoot that. I have a couple of different scenarios. Okay, but if you notice too, let me turn my auto back on and pull back. Once again, if you see this log scale chart, this log scale chart is, I've connected the two peaks during the two cycles, and it's pointing at a specific spot. And so I think if I were to make a prediction based on this information, then what I think is going to happen is I think that if we spike to I think we're going to hit this kind of sweet spot somewhere in this area, like I pointed out to you. That's why that log scale line is there connecting the tops, because that's providing somewhat of a basis for where I'm aiming for. Now, I am not married to a price target. It's going to be in part by a bunch of indicators, like there's the Pi cycle, there's the R hodl that I'm looking at aside from these things. But then I've also got these 131-day ranges that I'm also looking at. And also, price action is going to be the biggest tell as well. Okay. So then if that's going to be the cycle high, then where is the low going to be? If I go to about the seventh vertical, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So notice I've got this red box. It's going to be somewhere along here. And actually, if I open up, um, if I re-enlarge this line, what I also did in a completely different way is I connected the lows from the previous two cycles on the log scale chart. And I'm targeting somewhere in this vicinity. So if we get all the way to the seventh vertical, then I suspect that our low could be as high as, about 65,000 or as low as about 45,000. That's where I see it that it could be. And then obviously once we get to 7th, 8th, ninth, after the ninth vertical, then the next halving is going to happen at some point. So it's kind of interesting. It's not obviously like it's just one way to look at what Bitcoin is doing. I'm not saying it's the right way, but a lot of, I follow GBTC and other things, and I have been using this as a way to trade GBTC, and I've been doing pretty well with that for the most part. We got a little bit of a, you know, setback up here in this area, and I've been having to look more closely at Bitcoin's just normal price action. But I have used this to help me with GBTC. I've helped me to use this to think of where my spike targets are going to be, where I'm looking for potential 30 to 40% pullbacks and whatnot. And so it's helped me a lot. It's helped me come, to a place where I can find something close to where a lot of other people, a lot of different kinds of people are targeting Bitcoin's peak as well as Bitcoin's low. And so to me, I feel like it's, reasonable to suspect that it's going to be close. It may not be exact, but I think it'll be close. So the previous two cycles have told me that I can follow this to get pretty close to the cycle top. And so I'm going to use this as part of my research and as part of what informs me of when to get out. So hopefully that was something interesting for you. Go ahead and like and subscribe and share if you learned something from this video and if you thought it was helpful, a helpful way to look at Bitcoin. Have a great day. I'll see you guys next time.